Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Tim Buckley, founder of Beyond the Lines. For anyone joining us for the first time, Beyond the Lines helps leaders across audit, risk, and controls turn good work into better decisions, clearer ownership, and stronger outcomes. The work we do is rooted in internal audit transformation, but the challenges are broader. They show up in assurance, risk, controls, governance, and the business itself. The Leadership Signals series is about practical conversations on what helps this work land in the real world. For the next 45 minutes, I'll be joined by Trent Russell, founder of Greenskies Analytics and host of the Audit podcast. Trent helps internal audit teams develop analytics and AI strategies, makes them work in practice, and move up the maturity model. Today's session is AI and analytics for audit leaders, what to actually change in how you run the function. At the moment, there's a lot of noise around AI and analytics, lots of tools, lots of demos, lots of talk about efficiency. But the bigger question is what actually needs to change in how audit work is planned, delivered, reviewed, and reported. So today we'll explore what audit leaders should be thinking about if they want AI and analytics to improve the function in a meaningful way. Please use the Q&A function as we go, and I'll bring those questions into the conversation where we can, and we'll also have some time at the end. Trent, thank you again for joining me. I'd love to hand over to you for a brief introduction before we get into it.
Yeah, sure. Hey, everybody. Thanks for being here. Tim, thanks a ton for having me. Having seen some of the stuff you've been posting and putting out lately, it's very good. There's a lot of
Thank you
slop
very much.
out there right now. And so every time I see your stuff, I'm like, oh, this is like refreshing. So anyway, yeah, Trent Russell, I'm the founder of Greenskies Analytics. We say we're the go-to place for all things analytics and AI for internal audit. Also, as Tim mentioned, host of the Audit podcast, a weekly podcast, Q&A interviews with CAEs, audit leaders, AI leaders who know nothing about internal audit, but then we look at their ideas of AI relative to the internal audit lens. So that's
Mhm.
always fun. And then we also host the Audit Analytics and AI conference every spring and fall. So if you like hands-on demos, this is how you actually do this stuff from your peers and practitioners who are actually doing this. You can check us out. We can kind of maybe talk about that a little bit later. But anyway, I think that's it for now, Tim.
That's great. Thanks so much, Trent, and thanks again for being on. Really looking forward to this conversation. So to set the scene, why do you think this topic matters so much now for audit leaders out there?
I think the pace of change conversation is like we all know that. I feel like if I led with, oh, it's because things are changing so fast, the audience would be like, yeah, we know, we've heard that 1,000 times.
Yeah.
I think more so than anything, like specifically the way things are changing or can change is like if you even take analytics for an example, it's easier to do analytics now than it's ever been. Like
Mhm.
anyone who actually cares to do it can do it. Still need guidance, of course, but with that said, like, historically there's been issues with operational auditors and IT auditors being to work together. That's been an issue for a long time. We've gotten past that, I think, but it was when
Mhm.
I was coming up. So now if you think about it and you go like, okay, we have operational, we have IT, and now we can filter in, like we can actually do analytics throughout the life cycle of an audit. That changes how you're going to do an audit.
Yeah.
Similarly, with the capabilities of AI, that can fundamentally change the way we do an audit. So I think that's why it's like primo right now that we talk about the topics that we're going to hit on today, because that's what I'm pushing my clients to do is don't just automate what you're doing, completely reimagine and rethink what you're doing because it is possible now. Not easy, but it's possible.
Yeah. I think that's really important. I mean, that's the root of the whole webinar really is we can't just be focused on automating really small parts of our process. We need to think bigger than that and think about our whole operating model.
Yeah.
And it sort of leads me to the next question I had, which you mentioned on there is, why do audit leaders need to think beyond just specific tools and demo and hype?
Yeah. It's, the same problem repeated, some things change and they stay the same. So the idea of like we're just going to get licenses for everybody on the team and we'll be good to go, that's not going to work. Like you still have to implement the change within the team to make it effective. And like I'm big on takeaways, so I try to give like as much as I possibly can. And I
Yeah.
think the takeaway here would be, and what I talk to audit leaders about is you can't just be like, hey, we have the licenses now, cool. Everybody go do AI analytics, make us look really good, and then I'll look really good, and I'll go, I'll look good to the CEO and the board and everybody else. If you're an audit leader, if you can show your team how you're using these tools also, it's going to make them go, oh, this isn't just like some other initiative that we have to do. This isn't just like, hey, go do Agile, and then that's kind of it. This is like, oh, if the leadership is doing this, then it's real, and we need to be doing it too. So if there was a practical takeaway for leadership folks on this side or on this call, it would be get in the tools yourself and share with your team how you're using these tools also.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. Lead by example.
Mhm.
So for the audience, then, if we sort of take a step back, can you explain, in your view, what's the practical difference between isolated use cases, which we've mentioned, and real operating model change? And if you've got any examples that you can share, I think that'd be really helpful for people that are maybe at the start of this journey and trying to understand, what is the scope of this that we're trying to achieve?
It's more of a change management issue than anything. And it's always funny to talk about change management with audit because like especially the IT audit side, we think of like controls around change management. Was the change
Yeah.
authorized, tested, and approved? But I mean like people changing, changing
Hmm.
habits, changing mindsets. And so that's what you have to do to get like the real change. And so like an isolated case is going to be like typically what we see is, and depending on the size of the team, you might have one auditor who's done something like pretty cool using a prompt or something like that. But
Hmm.
then that might just stay with that auditor, or it might honestly be forgotten about that auditor because there's no process in place to reuse that or to improve upon it. And so that's usually what we see. Again, it's just like, hey, everybody go do it, and we're gonna get there. When you really need an entire like a process around this. And so
Hmm.
the analogy would be or methodology slash process. But the analogy would be, I've talked about this for years. We audit with a methodology. Like we have a
Yeah.
methodology that we follow. We don't just go, oh, we should go audit this thing. Like there's a risk assessment we do. We do planning, testing, fieldwork, reporting, et cetera. Similarly, like you have to have a methodology in place for this to really take hold. Like you have to have an analytics methodology. You have to have an AI development methodology. You have to have these processes in place so that these things are repeatable. When we see those types of things in place, teams tend to do really, really well. When we don't, that's where we see this isolated use case and there's not buy-in or adoption. There's not transformation within the entirety of the audit team.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And I have seen that with some clients as well, where, you might have someone that's super into AI, they're using some really good prompts, perhaps speeding up a part of their process. But in terms of that overall methodology piece, how do you apply that to the whole sort of cadence of working? That's not quite there. And
Right.
have you got any sort of examples of where you've seen this work maybe really well, or any advice on that?
It comes back to creating a methodology or a process around it.
Okay.
That's the critical factor of it. So again, like we see success when teams do that, or when we work with teams to develop that with them. That's where we
Yes.
see a lot of success. Yeah.
Okay, so that would be the key takeaway here. That's sort of start with that methodology. Yeah.
Yeah, have a dent to the analogy of we don't audit without a methodology. We have one we follow. Similarly, you
Hmm.
need one for AI analytics and tech in general.
Yeah. No, that's great advice. And where have you seen recently in AI or analytics things being overhyped, or also like things maybe being underused or misunderstood specifically in internal audit?
Yeah, I absolutely love this question. I think the overhype is probably the greatest example or like the most out there example is we're just going to take our PBC, we'll take some PDFs from the client, we'll take our lead sheet or whatever it is, we're just going to drop it in the tool and say go test for new hires and it'll do it perfectly because AI is
Okay.
brilliant. That's not how that works. It requires a lot more than that. So I think there's some like overhype there. And then the other kind of crazy example that people keep asking me about, and I see a lot of conversation around is, hey, we're just going to vibe code our way to develop a new audit management system, and that way we don't have to rely on this third party one. Um,
Okay.
those third party applications that you're using to for your audit management system were developed over years and years and years by software engineers. Like you can
Yeah.
vibe code like a little piece, right? Like We always talk about within analytics, like you can just kind of like vibe code, find duplicate invoices. There's a lot more to it than that, but as an example, but to build like an application requires a lot more than that. So that's where kind of on the AI side, on the analytics side, it's underused now, even though it's easier than ever, but it's
Okay.
also misunderstood because it's not just having the code written for you and then you're done. Coming back to there's a whole methodology in place that you need to have in place to be able to execute on it. So that's where I'm seeing, excuse me, between the two, that's where I see what I see being underutilized is this focus on AI, which is great for efficiencies, this underutilization of analytics with the use of AI, which we always talk about AI, of course, you can get insights, but that's more efficiencies. And if I'm management, like that's great. You did more audits. Cool.
Yeah.
But if I'm management, I want the insights. Tell me the thing that I didn't know was out there, regardless of what it is, risk or opportunity. And
Hmm.
so I think people are starting to like not necessarily use AI to find insights, the best way to do that is with data. So I think that's where the misunderstanding is on the analytics side.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really important point. And actually, it's just making me think of my own experience. A few years ago, everything was analytics and increasing the team's capability around analytics. And actually, since the sort of AI bubble has been here, you hear that word less and less. People are
Mhm.
more focused on the efficiencies. And this is probably a good time to take that step back and think, well, no, let's use the analytics, pull the data in alongside the AI to actually drive meaningful value and insight.
Yeah, you don't have to be
Um,
like a full-time programmer or like data analyst anymore. Like I said
no,
earlier, practically anyone can do it if you want to do it, or if the change management habits are in place to do it.
yeah. Okay. We've got a question here around methodology, so I'll go to that because I think it's a good time. So it's from Tessa. In terms of methodology, are you talking about how we use, if say, risk and control matrices, and how we put together the testing and using AI with Excel, or how we review the results as graphs, for example? Would you expect internal audit teams to put together a methodology on how we're using AI with these examples?
So if you think of usually analytics is with, and we'll go AI analytics, is like a lot of teams just go, we're going to do continuous auditing.
Yes.
There's still a methodology you follow to do continuous auditing. It's not you
Hmm.
just build it and then cross your fingers and kind of hope management buys into it. So like step one within the methodology, you would have to get buy-in from management. We're going to build this. Are you actually going to use it? And I've seen horror stories where people have spent 2 years building a continuous auditing
Wow.
solution, and then management went, "That's cool. We're not going to do that though. Like we already do something similar." So um,
Okay.
or like in like typically even then when we see analytics used throughout an audit, like for planning, for example, it's usually like, hey, what's the turnover rate for this area we're going to audit? What do the JEs look like coming out of there? What does T&E look like coming out of there?
Hmm.
And that's great, like at a high level, but like you need to have the methodology in place to actually drive scope change. So like we're looking at this because of certain risks, and those risks might not tie necessarily to this high level view of that area we're auditing. It's specific to those. So having the processes and the methodology in place to execute on throughout the life cycle of an audit is what I'm getting at.
Okay. That's great. Thanks for that, Trent. So the next question I had then was, what should audit leaders be rethinking, sorry, in the audit operating model?
Um, I think you can really look to change how planning and reporting are done in
Okay.
terms of this is going back to the efficiencies. Um, so like the advice that we've been giving as it stands today on the 23rd of July and where the models and capabilities sit, you can automate, literally anyone could automate to a degree or at least get insights to a degree during planning and reporting with just prompts. It might not be perfect, um, but like you can see value there. And so like for example, there's a team that we worked with and they started off with just kind of like a prompt to help with one section of one section of their planning memo.
Hmm.
And then they added on to another section of the planning memo and another section to the point where at one point they had this 20-page Word document
Yeah,
of a prompt. They would take that, they would, manually upload it into the tool and then kind of fill in some of the blanks and it would help, you could talk to it and it would help you do your planning memo.
yeah,
That escalated from that to, hey, we're going to take each individual prompt for the most part, and we're going to build individual agents for that. And then we're going to have this orchestration layer. For those that aren't familiar with orchestration, that's I would look into that as you start to, especially if you're on Copilot Studio, that's a real benefit there.
okay.
Um, so now they have like multiple, there's like 20 agents that
Hmm.
all work together to get the planning memo done. And so like you start to see this like gradual increase in how it's being done. So to where now a large majority of their planning is completely automated. And the human in the loop is still absolutely critical. And I hope we can
Yeah,
start talking judgment at some point.
yeah, we
Um,
will.
okay. So that's kind of what I'm talking about there.
Yeah. No, I think that's really good advice because I think, basically start small, start incremental and build it out from there. I think some people think, with AI, you're going to come in and, like you say, one prompt, do my planning memo, and that's how it's going to be. But actually, you need to start with something specific, refine it over time, get comfortable with that very small piece of, say, the planning
Yeah.
memo and then enhance it. Great.
Yeah.
And I think that goes some way to answer the question we had here from Chris, which was around at what point should a chief audit executive treat AI and analytics, not as an enablement initiative, but as a redesign of the internal audit operating model. So I think we've covered
Yeah.
that one there as well. Great. Um, okay, so let's go to the next question. So what could change realistically in practice? So how do you think AI and analytics should change the way leaders think about audit quality? So not just productivity and speed, which I know we talk about a lot with especially with AI.
Yeah. And analytics is still less about speed and more.
Hmm.
I mean, you can do like full population testing, of course, but you can do that with AI now also.
Yeah.
Um, And so on the quality piece, it is more about finding the insights. Like I'm going to keep coming back to that. Analytics for me is
Hmm.
about insights. So if you to improve the quality, that is through insights. Um, and you can do again full population testing with the data also. But now AI lets you do full population testing for areas where the data is not super structured. It's like classic, again, like you can take a PDF and like pull out that data now and get it in nice rows and columns so you can actually do something with it.
Yeah.
Um, I think the thing here though on the quality is to consider, because I've seen a lot of chatter about this over the past, I guess, year and a half, 2 years. Hey, now we can do full population testing. It's easier than ever. We can use AI to do that, whether you try to do that in-house or you work with a third party. But I know from my experience, coming back to what I said earlier, like if you do full population testing, does management even want that? And are we going to do
Yeah.
it across every, not, you can't do it across literally every control. It's not, the cost doesn't make sense, but you have to kind of like pick and choose where that makes sense. And you have to make sure that that is what management wants. Otherwise, it's a huge waste of resources.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think that's where like when people come to quality, that's what they think about. And maybe maybe I'm touching on something we're going to hit on later also, but on the quality side, like you can use AI now to actually get insights relative to the risks that you're not considering that you wouldn't have otherwise. And so
Okay.
if we did like a simple prompt of give me an RCM for this area that I'm auditing, it's likely going to come up with something that we didn't think of, like the person didn't think of, because it has access to the entirety of the internet that it can pull all this information from. And so it's going to be able to pull from like all these different sources and then be able to piece those together in a way that our brains just can't, even if we
Yeah.
spent, a lot of time manually searching for risks and things like that. There's going to be something that gets missed. And so, especially if we go, hey, we are audit, it's about mitigating risk to a degree. Um, how can we increase the quality of that? Using AI to like build out your RCM. There's the team we work with, and that's where they spent most, like all of their planning ties to the RCM. So like
Hmm.
all those agents that we were talking about earlier, it's all to the benefit of creating a higher quality RCM, which is pretty cool to see when they go, we never would have thought about that. Management might not have even thought about that, but here we have at least the idea of it to consider.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point because sometimes we can be a bit confined in what we know. So we're only looking at how to improve processes that we've already got in place or, based on our own knowledge, but actually using these tools to go beyond that, to find risks that we would never have thought of. It just shows the
Mhm.
possibility and the true extent of the value we're going to be able to add if we harness this technology correctly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, great. So we spoke a bit about how you've seen examples in sort of planning. Do you have any sort of real life examples that you're seeing in the market of how AI is perhaps changing reporting? Because I think you mentioned reporting as well is a really good area to focus on.
Yeah. And there's a really advanced team, I would say. And they actually started, this is interesting. They started with reporting and they're kind of working their way backwards.
Okay.
So, like our brains naturally think like, let's start with even just planning and go forward as we
Yeah.
like develop, like we'll crush planning and then we'll do maybe testing and then we'll do reporting. Um, so I thought that was interesting. They started that way, but certainly being able to take like reporting's pretty standard and the language that we use is pretty standard within that, like within any given team, the language is pretty standard. And so
Hmm.
that's a pretty solid use case for AI is we have this standard knowledge base, i.e., prior reports that know our tone, our language, types of words we use. I know some teams have like report writing manuals
Yeah.
also to
Yeah.
go like, this is how we, like follow it. This is our tone, et cetera, like I was
Our
talking about.
tone. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So to be able to take all that and put it into, we'll just call it a database or RAG solution, and then hit that and say, based on how we've historically done it, here's all of our issues. Now write the report for us. For those that do the five C's, I struggled with the five C's when I was in internal audit. Let me adjust my light here.
Yeah.
Because I always be like, well, that C sounds just like that C. Like what? I don't really understand the difference. Which is why I mostly just hung out with the data instead of on the reporting side. But being able to have it spit that out for you, a first draft, and then human in the loop review it, and then go from there is a primo example. I think it's where, like even if you look at some of the audit management systems that are out there, most of them started with reporting in terms of AI enablement within the tool. It was with reporting. I think some of the first use cases that we really saw were all around reporting because reporting's all text and these
Yes.
LLMs and AI solutions are built on text and they generate text. Like the math still isn't great there. Um, and so that's really what like on the reporting side, it can be extremely helpful and it's relatively easy, but like just jump in, start trying, and you'll see like, oh, that language kind of sucks. Why does that not super good? And then you can go back in and refine your prompt and your agents around that.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. Okay, so as we do start to use more AI and the technology is maturing, what do you think internal audit teams should stop doing or be doing less of?
So I'm sorry, say that one more time.
So what do you think internal audit teams should stop doing or be doing less of as AI starts to mature?
Um, I would focus less on actually automation in the sense of I would still want to apply judgment. So if like I flip that question around, what should we focus
Yep,
more on? It's on the
yep,
judgment side of things.
okay,
I think the judgment is where we're going to lose.
okay,
I mean, imagine if like as you came up, Tim, you were, or I'll tell my side. I started off as a staff, like everybody.
yep,
I did my work. A senior reviewed it, ripped it to shreds, added a
yep,
bunch of comments. Through addressing those comments, I went, "Oh, that's how we do this," or I didn't think about it that way.
yep,
Um, and now there is and will be going forward less judgment applied in what we do because the AI is making some of the judgment, and so we have to be able to review it and apply our judgment. But if we never came up in this system where we're taught how to use judgment, then that's going to die off. Like it took me when I was in external audit, I probably within my first year audited. 50 applications, like on the IT audit side,
Hmm.
at whatever, 50 to 60 hours a week, on the how we do things over here anyway, in external audit. And it took probably that full year before I went, oh, that's what auditor judgment means, And
Yeah.
it actually it wasn't until we used to we used to get away with documenting this way. We go like we noted this, dot dot dot, but it's not an exception based on auditor judgment. And I remember the first year I was allowed to do that. Like I could just say, based on auditor judgment, this is not an issue, and then add maybe a little bit
Okay.
more context to it. And then eventually, because you would see that like in a bunch of our work papers, regardless of the team that I was on, our leadership came down and they're like, you have to actually explain what your auditor judgment is. You can't
Yeah.
just say auditor judgment. So judgment is something that takes time to develop. And if we go, hey, we have a lot of this process automated now at a staff one type level or new hire, new entrant level, now we need people that can come in and review that. I think that's what's gonna like die off. And maybe a non-audit example that I've been talking about recently. So like I've relied on GPS forever. Like it's been around since I was able to drive a car.
Yeah.
And so I have zero sense of direction because I just type in the address and it takes me where I need to go.
Same.
Um, yeah. And so like, and it drives my father-in-law nuts because he did not have that. So he'll still use like a huge, you unfold the map, look at it kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, and so it was probably within the past, like I've started to realize my over reliance on AI in the past 6 months. And I went, okay, I need to think first, apply my judgment first, me ideate, me be creative first. And
Hmm.
then I'll have the tools kind of like pick that apart and find gaps in what I'm thinking.
Hmm.
Um, so similarly, like GPS, like I've stopped using it as much. Like I don't need to use a GPS to drive my kid to school. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I've got
Yeah.
that one
Yeah.
pretty well figured out by now. So I guess all that to say, we need to think first, use critical thinking. That's the other area that's starting to die off. And
Yes.
I know I'm taking forever on this question, but I think this is like super important. And this is our lack of judgment within the profession is what's going to not kill the profession, but it's going to harm the profession.
Yes.
There's an AI first colleague of mine who, when he introduces himself, he says he's been doing AI since 83, since 1983. So like he built the stuff that's at the bottom of all the other stuff that has now
Okay.
created the AI that we're familiar with in terms of generative AI and LLMs.
Yeah.
So he's all AI, like IBM, all that kind of good stuff, super genius, that kind of stuff. So anyway, he's a professor at a prominent university here in the States. And his leadership came to him and said, "We want you to create a course. We're going to put it online. It's going to be open to the public. Like a lot of these courses you see from like MIT and Harvard and
Yeah.
stuff like that. It's great."
Yeah.
And so they said, you can pick the topic though. We don't care what it is. Any topic that you feel like is important, we want you to pick it, design a course around it." And I would assume he picked something like, um, how tokens work or the ins and outs of LLMs or some super technical, like that would be my expectation, the history of AI.
Yeah.
Instead, he picked
Uh,
critical thinking.
Okay.
So he has an entire course just around critical thinking because he said it's dying right now.
Mm.
And the biggest impact he felt like he could have on people in this age of AI is for him to teach people how to become critical thinkers or to think more critically. So I know I'm belaboring the point there and kind of rambling, but it's extremely important that we understand that.
No, I think it's a super important point, and it leads on to the next question I had anyway, which was how can leaders use AI without weakening judgment, credibility, or control? And I think critical thinking, as you say, is key there. It is an interesting conundrum, isn't it? Because if I think back to when I started at KPMG, same situation, was a junior, not really too much understanding of what audit even was, and getting my work picked apart by the seniors, and that's how you learn. It taught me how to have professional skepticism as well. And
Yeah.
we're in a world where AI is making a lot of those judgment calls, how can we expect new people in the profession to have that ingrained in them to actually be able to think critically? So I do think that is probably one of the areas that's most challenging in terms of changing the operating model going forward.
And you hit on credibility. I know we're coming up against it to a degree on the time, but on the credibility front, I was just talking. We did a webinar last week. It was me and two other AI folks, and then Richard Chambers was running the panel.
Yeah,
And somebody asked this question while we were doing our panel around the credibility and should we disclose our use of AI? And so that was their topic. Like, should we, whatever you call them, your clients, your auditees, whatever that is, your coworkers, when you go to audit them. And like our collective takeaway is like we don't explain the entirety of our methodology to management. We
no,
go like, hey, we adhere to these standards and dot dot dot. It's like a two-line sentence in the in the report. And so similarly, like I don't think we need to disclose our use of AI to management. And I think it would hurt our credibility to do so. Like if we come back to the AI slop,
yeah,
I know when I'm scrolling through LinkedIn or something and I see like okay, this is obviously written by AI and they didn't even try to change it. I mean,
hmm
you can read the first three words and see the
yeah,
structure and go, nope, keep scrolling. Like as soon as I recognize it, I go, I'm not going to read that. I don't care. And so I think it could hurt our credibility to say that we're using AI. I mean, they're going to assume we are, but it would hurt our credibility. If I knew, like, maybe this is what I'm getting at, because AI slop is a pretty hot topic right now in just society. If I knew that a report was generated by AI and I'm reading it, I'd be like, I don't even, this is junk. Like I
yeah,
would be more dismissive of it than I would otherwise. So, um, anyway, when I hear credibility in AI, that's another point that I want to make sure that I get across is we don't have to disclose it, and there is a stigma against using AI on in social media or anything else, and I think
hmm
that applies to us as well.
yeah. That's good advice. Okay, I'll ask one more question, then we'll come to a couple of Q&As. So leading on from what we've just discussed, what sort of governance or oversight should sit around AI-enabled work? And specifically, what type of governance can we have that's not going to sort of stifle or kill the momentum that we're trying to achieve?
Yeah, I think the thing to think of is like think of AI as assisting the auditor, but the auditor still is accountable for the work, like the
Yeah.
evidence, the judgment, and the conclusions. And so we're still at a level where human in the loop is necessary. I can't imagine a world where it's not.
hmm
I guess if it's not, then literally nobody's going to have a job and it's just going to be agents running the world.
Yeah.
And so for governance, I think that's really important from that perspective. And then governance, if we're talking about especially building agents, like within our teams, building agents, having the governance structure around that.
hmm
If we're building analytic solutions, continuous auditing, continuous monitoring, like there's governance procedures that need to be considered around that as well. Um, and so it is like it's always funny to me when and I'm guilty of it on the very first audit I ever did, but when we will audit something to death, like let's take change management or like the development of software
Yeah.
and we'll audit that thing to death. And then when we go to build some kind of analytics solution, we're like, we're not going to test the code. Like, why would we test the code? You know what I mean? Like, we don't want to do
Yeah.
it either. Like I remember that story, the first client I was on when I was an external audit, there was a like a physical gate that we had to go through. And me and the senior, we could just fit through it. We didn't have to swipe the badge. We could just literally
Oh,
kind of like
okay.
squeeze our ways through it. And so we got there and he didn't have his badge. And I was like, well, we can just, and he's like, we can't do that. We have to adhere to the control. We can't be hypocrites and like circumvent this control. And so we had to walk like all the way back to get his badge to
Yeah.
then swipe it to get through. So anyway, I don't know. That just kind of popped in my head. But to summarize, human in the loop is still absolutely critical. It is ultimately ownership. The ownership is on us, our judgment, our conclusions, not AI's.
Yeah.
And so that's where I would high level walk away with on the
Okay.
governance side.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so we've got a couple of questions here. So one is how can AI enhance the value and impact of internal audit where management resistance to change is driven by leadership attitudes and organizational culture? Um, yeah, how can we enhance the value of internal audit where we're coming against that resistance?
If this is resistance from outside
Well,
of internal
from
audit,
yeah, from management, driven predominantly by leadership attitudes, organizational culture, processes that are already established, and different levels of tolerance to human error is what the example gives.
yeah, unfortunately, there's not a silver bullet to that. Like, if we're talking about changing culture, you could consider, because that's what this whole thing sounds like is a culture
Yeah.
issue. I mean, you could consider doing some kind of culture audit or behavior audit and trying to find something there. Um, I know there's some IA standards around that have been released lately, but it's a difficult thing to navigate. And like I said, there's not a straight answer. And it's similar to like I know there's CAEs that go, it doesn't matter what I do, the CEO, the board, the CFO, whoever, they do not care about our opinions. They don't
Hmm.
want us to be there. They know that the internal audit is a function of the business based on the size and the risks and regulatory reasons. Like basically CEOs going, we have to have you. I don't want you. I think you're a waste of money. They would never say that, but when they're not asking for our opinions, it's the same thing. And interviewing CAEs over the past 6 years, um, if that's the opinion, it is extremely difficult to change that, and it's definitely not going to happen overnight. So to try to change the entire culture of an organization, it's just small wins that add up ultimately. And there actually is a lot of there's a lot of internal audit teams that we talk to and work with. Like this one that we're working with, they go, we want to be the leaders in AI for our organization. We want them to come to us to be like the how do we do this? You did that. That's cool. How do
The
we do that?
SMEs, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And so maybe that's the best way to do it is to get those wins and share them with management so that they get like the value from this. But other than that, it's tough. And it really takes it's a team effort, but the CAE or the audit leader has to be the one leading that as well.
yeah. No, I think that's really good advice, especially around the small wins. And one thing I'd probably add to that as well is just around talking the language of the business. So if you can show the business actually by doing this, we can, improve this efficiency, reduce this cost, help you achieve this commercial objective, and actually start to demonstrate how those small wins go beyond just internal audit. Like you say, if they're becoming the experts, I think that can start to break those barriers down. But it can feel an uphill battle at times, but just take the small wins and they compound over time.
I think the other like practical takeaway as you were saying that, Tim, is when we are like in the field and we're talking to management doing our audit thing, and let's say they have like, we're looking at their controls, for us to not necessarily just audit that control and go, hey, here's issues that we found, or yep, you get the thumbs up, you're good to go. We used to do this with automation in general,
Hmm.
but then add like a section to that to go, heads up, you can use AI this way, this way, this way, this way, and this way to automate that thing or to make that more efficient or to get better insights or something like
Yeah,
that. So to be the ones that educate as we're like in the field working with them, um, we can't really build stuff and just hand it over to them, but we
no,
can sit there and add some guidance to be like, all right, yeah, try this. Yep, that worked. Like sit down and have the conversation with them, have them walk through it and get them like a little taste of, oh, this can actually like work and this makes my job easier. And I hate doing that thing, and now I don't have to spend as much time on it because we used AI to do it. So I think maybe us
yeah,
being the educators and like giving the guidance on how AI can make their job easier. They can be more efficient. They can be more impactful. I think that's also a good way. Takes time, of course, but I think like little by little, it's not going to happen with just one like fell swoop, I don't think, short of the CEO changing their mind or getting a new one.
Okay. Okay, we've only got a few minutes left, so we'll do the last Q&A question, and then I've got one more question before I hand over to you for a brief um, final sort of comment. So this question here is quite specific. So it's could you suggest sort of the best tools for healthcare sector, specifically hospitals, or also any audit management reporting system that goes right through from observation to response to closure?
Um, I don't think there's a best tool for a given industry right now because they're all so generic and they're not specific to industries. I wish we had more time. Eventually, we're going to get to this spot where you can just like download a model and then you can like train it yourself. So, like to answer this person's question, you'll have a healthcare sector, specifically hospital. So you'll have you could have your own within your audit department, your hospital internal audit based on where you live or like the part of the world that you live in and the regulations there model that works just
Okay.
for your internal audit team. That is the future over the next probably 2 to 5 years. Making a guess on any of this stuff is just a
Yeah.
crapshoot. Um, but whatever tool that your organization has is going to be the best tool. I would not advise using any shadow AI or unapproved tools on the
Oh,
side.
yeah. Yeah, of
Yeah.
course.
Um, and then any audit management reporting system from observation to response to closure. That is not my area of expertise, so I will defer that question to maybe a future guest who that is their area of expertise.
Yeah, that's fine, Trent. Last question from me would be, what can someone start changing in the next 30 days? Everyone on this call, when they walk away, feeling pumped by this conversation, what can they start tangibly changing?
Their mindset and their habits. And so the example that we usually give is like if you even think about your phone, delete whatever the browser or like the search engine that you use. Don't even use that anymore. So whatever search
Okay.
engine that you would typically use, delete that.
Yeah.
Download a an LLM provider to your phone and just start using that. And that's going to change your habit. It's going to make you more AI literate because you're going to get frustrated if you just put some basic prompts and you're just like, oh my God, why would this work? And then you'll go, oh, okay, let me fix that. Let me fix that. Let me fix that. And a lot of times the personal stuff, so your personal AI use cases bleed into you learning more about AI in general and like increasing your AI literacy to where you bring that into your actual job. And so I think that would be
Okay.
a really good start is use it more for your personal life, like
Yeah.
try to use it as much in your personal life. Um, and that'll trickle into your professional life as well.
No, that's great. That's great advice. So before I wrap up, Trent, is there anything else that you'd like to share or tell the audience?
Last thing, so I did mention the Audit Analytics and AI conference. It is virtual, so regardless of where you are in the world, you can check that out. It's October 21st and 22nd. If you go to like my LinkedIn or just if you Google Audit Analytics and AI conference, that'll pop up. It is practitioners who go, "Hey, look, this is an agent that I built. This is exactly how I built it. This is a analytic that I built. This is exactly how I built it." And so it's
Okay.
showing you how to do the stuff, not just theory and all that kind of good stuff. So if you want to, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. Um, it's a really good spot to see me there. Shoot me an email, trent.russell@gskanalytics.com. It's another place you can reach me.
That's great. Trent, thank you so much. That was really a great conversation, and I really appreciate how you clearly brought the topic back to how audit functions actually work. Thank you to everyone as well that joined us live. For me, today's discussion really captured the bigger point, which is AI and analytics are not just about better tools or faster outputs. The real value is where they help audit teams create better insight, make better use of capacity, and support better decisions. And overall, what I'm getting from Trent is if AI is treated just as sort of a set of isolated use cases, it can easily become another side project. But if it's connected to how the function actually plans, delivers, reviews, and reports its work, it can become sort of much more meaningful. And overall, that links much more closely to the wider work that I'm building through Beyond the Lines as well, including the board trusted CAE toolkit. The toolkit is designed to help audit leaders move from insight to action with practical tools around decision ready reporting, audit committee narrative, ownership, follow through, and audit impact. And it's help basically there to help good audit work land better with the people who need to act on it. So for those of you that are already part of the Beyond the Lines newsletter, you've probably seen this. If you've been thinking about whether to go ahead and purchase the toolkit, the founding rate that we've been offering does close tomorrow. So if you've been on the fence, it's probably a good time to take another look, and you can check that out at beyondthelines.ai. And the aim is simple: less control theatre, more decisions, ownership, and outcomes. So I'd just like to say thanks again for joining us, everyone. And Trent, thanks so much. Really appreciate your time and insight today. And yeah, with things sort of changing so fast, it'd be great to have you on again in the future and see where we're at in, 6 months' time.
It'll be significantly different than it is today. So yeah, let's do that. Appreciate it, Tim.
That's great. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice evening.
Thanks, everybody.